The Tampa Bay Buccaneers finally have a national media member in their corner. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this Thursday episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at @Yarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers as deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com. Here with you 3 days a week for the time being. We're going to get back to 5 days a week much sooner than later, but for the time being, at least 3 days a week. And I want to thank all of you for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. No ads, no hashtags, no anything, just text messages, one-on-one with me, like those insiders that knew that I was going live much later than originally planned because I was stuck in traffic trying to get home from work for nearly 2 hours. But go to joinsubtext.com to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Tristan Wirfs and Luke Goedeke get some love, and Barton talks to the media as he signs his rookie deal. All of that is coming up in a little bit, but let's start with the opposite of what the national narrative usually is around the Buccaneers. So we've pointed out a lot of different instances of the Buccaneers being overlooked, underrated, disrespected on this very show. Today, we have a nice little change of pace thanks to CBS Sports Pete Prisco. So Prisco took to Twitter to say a few things about the Bucs and where he sees them after spending some time in Tampa during minicamp. So I'm going to read the thread from Prisco that he posted on Twitter, and he started with, quote, "Watched the Bucs practice this week at minicamp, and a lot of people are sleeping on that team. They will win the division again. Much bigger and tougher on the offensive line, and Baker Mayfield is settled in at QB. The players love him from what I'm told. Bucs rookie wide receiver Jalen McMillan, a player I loved and was on my better than team, will be an immediate contributor. He caught a touchdown pass Tuesday from Mayfield, knows how to get open. The Bucs have to run the ball better, but that is the focus of the offense going into the season. Barton will help that in the middle of their offensive line. Tight end remains a soft spot, but they aren't awful there. Tampa Bay's defense will be good with their down linemen now that Vita Vea is in shape. Kalijah Kancey could be a star by season's end. He's bigger too. The secondary is happy to have Jordan Whitehead back at safety to pair with Antoine Winfield. McCollum and Dean will be good outside at corner, while nickel will be a battle. Keep an eye on rookie Tyke Smith, who has impressed. Rush will come from Yaya Diaby, but they might have to manufacture it with different pressure looks. NFC South picks for me right now: number 1, Tampa Bay; number 2, Atlanta; number 3, New Orleans; number 4, Carolina. One Twitter user replied to one of Prisco's tweets saying that all 3 Washington wide receivers are going to have productive NFL careers, to which Prisco replied, agreed. McMillan was the best of them in 2022, then got hurt. So that is Prisco's Twitter thread about the Buccaneers, and I love all of the things that Prisco laid out here, as it seems he's really getting a feel for the kind of team that a lot of us believe the Bucs will be. Pointing to Baker's standing within the team, the rookies they brought in, improvements on the roster, and he ends it all with his rankings where he thinks the Bucs will win the division over that sexy pick of the Atlanta Falcons based on what he has seen and what he has heard. This is a really refreshing thread from Prisco because it's not the national narrative. It's not the stance of they could really give the Falcons a run for their money, or we'll see if an average Bucs team can win a bad division this year. That kind of stuff that we usually get. I mean, have you all, for those of you in the live chat, have you all noticed this? When teams like the Falcons this year or the Saints were the sexy pick last year, when they get talked about as the favorites, it's because they've vastly improved or they've upgraded this or that position. But when it's the Bucs being talked about, it's, well, the division stinks, so someone had to win it. That's why I love what I'm seeing here from Pete Prisco. He doesn't just end it with the first tweet. He sent out 7 tweets talking about the different areas of the team, talking about what he sees, what he hears, and then uses those things as reasonings behind his opinions and behind that thread. He talks about McMillan and Barton and Tyke Smith. He gives love to the Dean and McCollum tandem. He points out studs and up-and-comers on defense. So for those of you that have been frustrated by the national narrative and the attention that the Buccaneers have been getting, show some love to Pete Prisco of CBS Sports for the work that he just did to give your team some love. And he did it by getting himself in the building. He got himself to practices. He had conversations with coaches and players, and he witnessed who this team is with his own eyes. Because I can promise you that the vast majority of writers and talking heads that keep gushing about Atlanta or downplaying the Bucs, they're not going to put in the same level of work that Pete just did to get in the building and start to see some of this stuff for himself, to get a firsthand account. Most of the people gushing about Atlanta, talking about, the Bucs overachieved or what have you, it's based on the fact that they don't like Baker Mayfield or they don't think he can succeed. They may not like Todd Bowles or think he can succeed as a head coach. They're going to talk about the offensive line, ignoring the upgrades there. They'll talk about Graham Barton, but they're not going to talk about the improvements along, the left guard position. Cody Mauch entering his second season and being an improved player. They're not going to talk about Rachaad White nearly having 1,000 rushing yards as pretty much the lone running back in a bad rushing offense last year. They're not going to put in the work to watch Jamel Dean and Zion McCollum work on the outside against Chris and against Jalen McMillan. They're not going to watch Jalen McMillan. They're going to talk about how he was the afterthought of the Washington wide receivers and that, he fell all the way to the end of the third round for a reason. Well, that reason being that he was injured and could not produce the kind of numbers that he did in 2022. Going to jump into the live chat real quick before we move on. We have Rick Dog finally made it. Go Bucs. Appreciate you jumping in on the live. Again, my apologies for the live show being much later than I had anticipated, but there's only so much that you can control. Many of you know what a mess I-75 can be at times. Chet says, did Randy Gregory ever show up? No, Randy Gregory did not show up to any of the mandatory minicamp practices, and he is now subject to over $100,000 worth of fines. The Bucs are going to handle it when they handle it. They'll take care of it internally. Not sure if they will levy fines or what the deal is behind all of that. I'm sure we're going to get word on that at some point, but for right now, we still don't have a reason for his absence, and we're not sure how the Buccaneers are going to handle it once he does finally come in. But of course, Greg Allman of Fox Sports pointed out on Twitter that in his introductory press conference, Randy Gregory talked about not, being a troublemaker, not wanting to, be a distraction or things like that. I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact quote off the top of my head, but not off to a great start there, Randy. You got to show up for the mandatory stuff. Fausto in the chat. I've been chatting with Fausto quite a bit. He is an insider. He says all rookies signed LFG. Yes, they are. We will talk about all of the rookies being signed coming up in a little bit. But Tristan and Luke are turning some heads. That is next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier, and prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. Some of you probably saw on Twitter that I was able to take my son to Game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals so that he could root on his Celtics, and what an amazing father-son moment that was. I would love to take him to an NBA Finals game in Boston, but I don't think there's going to be another game in Boston as the Celtics are looking to complete the sweep in Dallas. But getting tickets on Game Time would be the easiest part. It's the rest of the trip, whether it be to Boston or Dallas, that would be tough to figure out. With Game Time, I could wait until the last minute as prices begin to drop, or even wait until after tip-off when prices go down up to 60%. But if the NBA Finals aren't your thing right now, you can get Buccaneers tickets for the upcoming season for less than $60 each, and tickets to upcoming Rays games for as low as $20. And that is with all-in pricing. The process is as easy as you can get. I can use Apple Pay and have those tickets on my phone in just 2 clicks, and no surprises either. With that all-in pricing, you know exactly what you are going to pay without any surprise fees at the end. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. Every dayers, make sure you're coming back tomorrow. Going to talk about Bucky Irving and much, much more. You don't want to miss that. In the meantime, do you want to hear the latest news from around all of the sporting world, the NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup, NFL news, WNBA, but you want to hear more than just the national narratives, and you want the biggest stories without all the manufactured screaming? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Lots of people were out on Luke Goedeke after his rookie year, but a switch to right tackle last year, moving Tristan Wirfs over to the left tackle spot, appears to be one of the smartest moves the Buccaneers have made in quite some time. And that's saying something, because they've made some really smart moves throughout the course of at least Tristan Wirfs' career. But Pro Football Focus named their top-ranked tackles in the NFL, and Tristan got Tristan-level praise, or at least pretty close to it. He was ranked as the second best tackle in the National Football League, with PFF saying, quote, "The Buccaneers' decision to move Wirfs from right to left tackle before the 2023 season raised questions about whether his performance would decline. However, Wirfs recorded the second highest pass blocking grade among all offensive tackles and finished with a top 5 overall grade for the first time in his career at 83.0, end quote. However, it's the next thing that caught me a little off guard. I know Goedeke had a really solid year, switching back to his collegiate position of right tackle, even if he is a little undersized by NFL metrics. But PFF listed Goedeke as the 25th best tackle in the league, making he and Tristan Wirfs one of only 8 tackle tandems, both named to the top 32. About Goedeke, PFF said, quote, "When it was announced that Goedeke would move from left guard to right tackle after a somewhat disappointing rookie season, few would have bet that he would appear on this list a year later. However, the Central Michigan product put together a really impressive season as he ranked 8th among right tackles in pass blocking grade, a 72.5. So think about the fact that there are 64 starting tackles in the NFL any given week. The Bucs have both of theirs in the top 25. That's pretty freaking impressive. And that's the building block for this team to make the improvements that they've made. That's why they went out and they drafted Graham Barton. That's why they signed Sua Opeta and Ben Bredesen. When you have one of the top tackle tandems in the league, say that 3 times fast, and you still can't run the ball, you know why. It's the interior of the line. So what did they do? They took great strides to upgrade that interior to complement the level of players that they have as the bookends. This is another feather in the hat of Tristan Wirfs, who didn't participate in the mandatory minicamp, although he was in attendance. He isn't going to risk injury as he awaits that new contract that will, in all likelihood, make him the highest paid tackle in the NFL. He's going to kind of follow in the footsteps of Antoine Winfield Jr., who's now the highest paid defensive back in the league. You all know that. But the Bucs are going to make one of their cornerstones as happy as possible while making sure that he sticks around for a very long time. Jason Licht is going to reward those that earn it. And Tristan has certainly earned it, and he is going to get a mega deal, which could very well be why we won't see that deal get done or get announced until closer to or even after training camp begins. There's going to have to be a lot of shuffling money and structuring hurdles to get around in order to get this thing done. And the Bucs are going to make sure that it's what's best for both parties. The Bucs still need money to spend on other players in coming years. And Tristan, of course, wants to make sure that he gets his. He's absolutely going to get his. There's no question about that. The question is, how are the Buccaneers going to be able to structure that in order to maximize Tristan's earnings versus the Bucs ledger sheet? Essentially, you have to make sure, and that's why they've used the void years. There's going to be lots of guarantees. Are they going to front load it? Are they going to back load it? My guess would be they're going to back load it a little bit, give him a lot of guaranteed money, spread that out over some void years that can then kind of be recouped when an extension gets done at the end of this deal. But if you can backload it a little bit, knowing that the salary cap is going to continue to just jump and jump and jump and jump, that's kind of where they're going to be able to make this work the best. Tristan is going to be a massive cap hit. You have to be able to spread that out as best you can to make sure that you get all of these other players under contract that you're going to need to. Chris Godwin hopefully gets another deal with the Buccaneers. You're going to have free agents coming in. You're going to have to be bringing back your own guys. There's a lot to get done. And now it's starting to appear as though the Bucs are going to have to shell out some serious dough for Goedeke coming up next year, as he's set to become a free agent in 2026. If he continues to play as well or better than he did last year, he's going to be a heck of a lot more expensive than the $1.26 million that he cost for the team this year, or the $1.5 million that the Bucs are going to spend on him in 2025. Right now, Goedeke is an absolute steal, but that's going to be another big-time contract that the Buccaneers are going to have to get figured out. They could always draft and replace him, but at this point, with the growth that you have seen out of Luke Goedeke and the gigantic strides that he made from year 1 to year 2, you would think that he would make even more improvements going into year 3 and then probably into year 4. That's a guy, again, Jason Licht and the Buccaneers reward those that earn it. Luke Goedeke has absolutely earned it so far. We need to still continue to see that upwards trajectory. This can't be, the 2023 season can't be an outlier at right tackle. He's got to be even better than he was last year, which was still pretty darn good. But Goedeke is now putting himself in line for quite a bit of money in a deal with the Buccaneers sooner than later. Going to jump into the chat again real quick before we hit this final break. Destined for Greatness says, I really think we can have a top 10 offensive line this year. I 100% agree. With the addition of Graham Barton, again, the continued improvement of Goedeke, Tristan Wirfs is Tristan Wirfs. The questions are, what kind of leap from year 1 to year 2 can Cody Mauch make? And how much better can Sua Opeta be on the left side compared to Aaron Stinney and Matt Filer of last year? Those are the two question marks that you really have right now. Graham Barton, I give him like a question mark asterisk, because We don't know how it's going to be transitioning. Again, he was a tackle at Duke. How is he going to do transitioning to center in the NFL and going through some of those rookie growing pains? I think he's going to be perfectly fine. And yeah, Destin, I 100% agree. This offensive line has the potential to be top 10 in the league. What else do we have? Richard in the chat, when Rashad hits 1,000 yards rushing, the offensive line will get more recognition. Well, we would hope so, but I mean, we've talked about it on this show in recent weeks. What else does this team have to do to actually get some decent recognition? Apparently, they have to do a lot more than they have, because 4 straight playoff appearances, 3 straight division titles, and a Super Bowl victory in this decade, just not enough for the Buccaneers to get some attention. Got a couple of people celebrating that they made the live. I got Mike in the chat, late to the party, but made the live. We got Randy Jewell saying, I made the live, in all caps. Let's go Buccaneers. And then Lakita, Insider Lakita, I made it. Appreciate all of you in the live chat. Graham Barton signed his rookie deal and spoke with the media. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Wrapping things up here on a Thursday episode of Locked On Bucs. And then the Buccaneers officially have their entire rookie class under contract, as Graham Barton signed his deal on Thursday, 4 years, around $14 million, fully guaranteed. We don't have the full details on that contract yet. I will update you on tomorrow's episode. But Barton also spoke with the media following practice and was very open with reporters about where he is in the process. When asked about how much he's learned the offense, Barton said, quote, I don't want to stand up here and say I got it, because I think there's a long way to go. We've only been here a couple of weeks, but I definitely think the biggest thing is it's okay to make mistakes, but don't beat yourself up over making a mistake. Just correct it. Don't let it happen in a game. When you make it twice, that's when you get mad at yourself. I just think keeping my head above water and taking in as much as I can, just trying to listen to everyone, understanding my position as a rookie. I just got here. I don't know anything. I am telling myself that, and trying to soak everything in has kind of been my mindset. I feel like I've gained a lot of knowledge from the vets, the coaches, the meeting time on the field. I feel like I've learned a ton, and I'm excited to take these next couple of weeks and sort of digest it and come back for training camp ready to roll, end quote. First and foremost, that's exactly what I wanted to hear out of Graham Barton, almost word for word. I think too many rookies come into OTAs, mandatory mini camps, rookie mini camps, even into training camp and into the season, and they're so worried that they're going to make a mistake and lose their job or lose their opportunity, and they end up playing too passively. They don't really play to the level that they're capable of or the level that got them drafted in the first place. Barton telling himself that he can make mistakes as long as he learns from them and doesn't keep repeating them is a level of maturity that I think isn't too common from rookie players anymore. And I'm not saying that all rookies are immature. What I'm saying is I mean that Barton telling himself that it's okay to make mistakes, learn from it, correct it. It's more of a veteran mindset. As the old saying goes, you learn more from your defeats than you do your victories. So making mistakes at this stage in the game is the right time to do it, because now you have all the time in the world to correct it before it really starts to matter. Barton also was asked about adjusting to the NFL, and he said, quote, I wouldn't say it's the biggest surprise, but the depth and the detail at the NFL level of what you're doing, how you're doing it, technique, fundamentals, tips and tricks, things like that, how much more there is to the game of football, I guess, that you didn't always understand in college. So learning that has been the biggest leap going through that. Yeah, I mean, you're not in Kansas anymore, or at least not Durham. Jason Light has said for years, and I've repeated it on this show. David, when he was a co-host, talked about it on the show. The only misses that Jason Light has had in the draft has been because of problems above the shoulders. Barton is an incredibly smart guy, and he's going to be fine getting these details down. On top of that, he's in a great position group to learn from. He's got a leader like Tristan Wirfs, a player entering his second season in Cody Mauch that can help him prepare for that rookie wall that we saw Mauch hit towards the end of the year. You hope, especially at center, that Barton doesn't run into that problem. But, Mauch just went through it. He can help bring Graham Barton along. A guy like Opeta that comes from a franchise that's been incredibly successful lately. Then, of course, you have Goedeke, you have Robert Hainsey, you have all the rest of those guys. This is a group of guys that collectively want to shut people up. People that doubt the Bucs because the team couldn't run the ball last season or Baker was constantly running for his life. People that still don't believe that they can run the ball and that their quarterback isn't good enough or that they aren't big enough to withstand some of these defensive linemen. Those are the people that this offensive line wants to take the words that they've said and shove them down their throats. Do not think for 1 minute that this isn't a proud group of men that are willing to do whatever they can to keep their quarterback standing and help this team win football games. They've read the press clippings. They've seen the criticisms. They've seen that they were talked about as one of the worst lines in the league in 2023, that even though Tristan is there, everyone outside of that building thinks that he's the only one worthy of a starting job. These are the kinds of things that have this offensive line ready to roll, ready to be violent, ready to absolutely maul their opposition and shut a lot of people up. At least Pete Prisco's in their corner. Barton is now part of that group, and he's going to be out to prove that even as a center, he was worth that first-round pick, and that this offensive line is here to do two things: kick butt and chew bubble gum, and they're all out of bubble gum. Going to jump over to the chat one more time before we get out of here. We got Scotty J, Insider Scotty J, saying Baker and Barton are smart. This offense is going to take both of them to be on point. The communications between those two will be huge. If I was Baker, I'd have 62 stay at the house to study and change diapers. The center quarterback relationship is every bit, if not more, important as a quarterback wide receiver relationship. There are two players on an NFL team that touch the ball every single play. It's the center, it's the quarterback. If you do not have trust and belief and understanding between those two players, the offense cannot work. We already know that Baker loves him some Graham Barton. He has gushed about that guy, but it's about building that rapport, building that trust, building that rapport. And you start doing that now. And I've already seen some clips of Barton snapping the ball to Kyle Trask and Hainsey snapping to Baker Mayfield. They're going to keep switching it up. They're going to keep moving it around. I still believe that Barton is going to be your starting center. By time training camp rolls around, he's going to be running with the ones. He is going to be, working with Baker. I don't think that straight out of college he wants to stay with Baker and change diapers, nor do I think that, Baker's wife, being a brand new mother, probably wants this guy moving in. But I get the sentiment, Scotty J. I absolutely agree that relationship is going to be really, really important. Destined for Greatness says, everything I've seen of Barton reminds me of Marpet. Hope they have similar careers. I agree. I do hope they have similar careers. I just hope that Barton plays a lot longer. Please. I understand why Ali Marpet decided to move on from football when he did, but also that really sent the Bucs into a whirlwind of problems yeah, Barton's going to be a solid player. Let's see. Jensen and Jamie's was always a powder keg. Jensen and Jameis was always a powder keg. Brady and Jensen were solid. That's from Nathan in the chat. I'm not sure if Jensen and Jameis were really a powder keg. They seem to get along all right. Jensen was always one of the first ones to make sure that he was standing up for Jameis. I think that relationship was fine. I think the problem there was the frustration at the lack of production. We talked about it on this show for years and years. There was good Jameis and there was bad Jameis. There was the Jameis that was going to go out and win you single-handedly, bring you back and win you a game. But there was also the Jameis that was going to single-handedly blow everything up, screw up multiple times, and cost you a very winnable game. But I do believe that the two of them, at least from my understanding, the two of them got along just fine. That is going to do it for this episode of Locked On Bucs. Again, I apologize that this came so much later than it should have. Y'all want to go live again tomorrow? We want to go live again. All right, we'll go live again tomorrow. We're going to be talking about Bucky Irving. We're going to be talking about Baker Mayfield. The Locked On Podcast Network released their top 20 quarterbacks heading into 2024. We are going to discuss where Baker landed on that list and why. You're not going to want to miss it. The goal will be early afternoon for the live episode for tomorrow. The way it's supposed to be. Keep your fingers crossed. There's no fuel tankers that overturn themselves on the highway and cause a 2-hour traffic jam for me to be able to travel 4 miles. Yes, I said 2 hours for 4 miles. That was how I spent my day. In the meantime, check out everything going on over at BucsNation.com. Make sure you're following on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs. No ads, no hashtags, no anything. One-on-one conversations with you and me. We can talk about the Bucs. We can talk about, the NBA Finals. We can talk about hockey. We can talk about Deadpool and Wolverine, whatever you want. But you have to go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs to sign up. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.